All right, I said we're going to learn about pseudo elements, and we actually have to cover position first. So, because that's when it's most used, and that's when you can best see exactly what's going on. So, there are three different positions that you can set. Position would be the attribute name, and then the value would be one of three things. So this is going to be most noticeable on a page with a lot of content. So I'm going to go to lipsum.com, and I'm going to generate some junk text. I'm going to copy this and go into my index page here, and in section, I'm going to put a paragraph, and I'm going to close the paragraph. So we're going to be making multiple paragraphs here. Right, I need to open a new one, close the new one, one more. There. Can I not find that? Oh, that wasn't closed. Oh, none of these P elements were closed. Okay. Gotta close those so that everything will work correctly. There we go. What does that match to now? Doesn't match to anything. What is going on? Oh, right, because, all right, that's the initial paragraph element. When I opened the first one, it created one at the bottom there. So I got that straightened out. We've got 5 paragraphs. Let's go back here and refresh. As you can see, it pushed over the content, actually. Let me jump in here. And it wasn't in body, it was in top stories. This got all screwed up. Top stories is supposed to be section. There. Let's refresh now. There we go. This is our page. There's a lot of text on it, as you can see. So we're going to be discussing the header element right here with the idea main header. So I should already have a rule created for that where we added a border. I'm going to set the position right now to relative. I'm going to save and refresh, and you will not see any difference because the default position of items on a web page are relative. And that means relative to all the other content and to the viewport itself, or the entire page. So now I can change this to fixed. And what that means is it's going to stay in the same position when we scroll. So obviously for this we need to also make a few fixes. We're going to set width to 100%, and then we're also going to set background to an RGBA color. There we go. Refresh. And 255. There we go. That's the correct RGBA color I want. And it's kind of transparent. Let's make it more opaque, actually. Let's go with 0.9 for opacity. And there we go. Now, there's one other issue. We got to put the margin top to 0. So save that and refresh. Or hold on, where's the margin coming from? Is this just top that we're... Okay, yeah. There was no margin on it. It was just a positioning attribute. So you can use positioning attributes once you're either using a fixed or absolute position. And positioning elements are either top, left, bottom, and right. So I'm going to save this, refresh, and there we go. Now you can also add margin to the bottom, and that's, oh no, sorry, wrong element. You're going to be adding margin to the top of the body, and this should be equal to or greater than the height of the fixed element. In this case, it's a header. Right? So see how some things are hidden underneath of it. It's because once this becomes a fixed position, think of it like a layer. The search bar in the entire page is relatively positioned, and so it's going to start at the first possible place it can. So once we make the header fixed position, it moves it to a new layer, and the rest of the content that's still on the page moves up to where it would start normally if there was no header at all. So what we're going to say is margin top is going to be 100 pixels. I'm going to copy that over to the body element right here. I'm going to save it, refresh. There we go. I guess I already had a margin set there to 0, so I'm going to remove that because it's not good practice to override properties within the same rule, I guess. So yeah. So that is how things look when it's in fixed position. There's one more, absolute. I'm going to save this, and it hasn't changed how it looks. So if I remove that margin top here from the body, we're going to see that it, once again, hides under it. And this is exactly like the fixed position, that it becomes a new layer and the rest of the content moves to where it would be if this fixed or absolute element didn't exist. But the only difference is when we scroll, that doesn't stay at the same spot on the screen. So with a fixed position, it does, and that's because it uses the viewport itself to position it. So we're positioning it to the viewport, the top of the viewport right here. And so when we scroll down, the top of the viewport is still in the same spot. This is still the top of the browser view right here. So that's going to stay at the top. But when we put it into absolute position, that means absolute within the context of the page itself. So this is always going to be set to top equals 0 to the top of the page, not the viewport. So as you can see when I scroll down, that is what happens. So those are the 3 different types of positions, 9 times out of 10 or 9.5 times out of 10, which means there will be a half a time when you will either use fixed or absolute out of every 10 times that you create an element. But usually things are going to be relatively positioned, and that's the default state, and that's the default way to build a web page. There actually is a problem with older website GUI website creators that you can point and click a website into existence, and that's in order to get proper positioning within that program. The program, what it does is it uses absolute positioning rather than relative, and that's why that's one of the reasons we look down on website creators, specifically with how it writes the code. You know, the code is not maintainable. It's not even pretty to look at. You will read through code generated by Artisteer, for example. Artisteer is an old program that people still use. You will read through that code, and it will make you not want to design websites, or it might make you want to do it more. So basically, always use relative positioning unless you have to use absolute. So in the next video, we're going to be talking about those pseudo elements that I was talking about.